Ustad Hisham Abu Yusuf, all the way from Manchester. It's a pleasure to have you here in the One Pass studio.
Welcome to Sydney.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Wa
Very happy
alaikum
to be here.
salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ustad, are we incorrect in saying this is your first time in Australia?
First time in Australia.
MashaAllah.
Not the last, for sure.
Not the last, inshallah. We hope you come time and time again, inshallah. How you found it so far?
It's been whirlwind so far. I think I've just been in the country shy of 48 hours, but I've already taken a couple of flights. And alhamdulillah, people always ask me like, oh, you went to this country, like how was it? I said, I can tell you what the insides of the masjids look like.
MashaAllah.
But outside, I have no idea.
Oh wow, you still haven't seen Sydney yet. You still haven't seen.
I haven't seen anything in Sydney yet, but alhamdulillah, inshallah, al-umr qadim, inshallah, this time.
Inshallah, you'll get to see the beauty of Sydney.
MashaAllah.
You will be able to see the beauty of Sydney away from the concrete jungle of UK and Britain. Inshallah, you'll come here and enjoy the open air, the beautiful air.
I can already see like things. You guys have smaller population, a lot more space. There's a lot more detached houses, a lot more breathing space in general.
Yes.
The weather makes a huge difference on the mood. And I'm really impressed by the Islamic schools.
Yes.
You guys don't know what you have, really. SubhanAllah.
Yeah, the privilege of going to an Islamic school. Alhamdulillah, I had the honor of going to Islamic school.
I think
So,
I was there.
Yes, that was my school, lo and behold. But, yeah.
You mentioned two interesting things: space in Australia, in England, as we're both, I could say, countrymen somewhat. But we'll get into that a bit later. We tend to build quite up in England, but over here, because of the vast amount of land we brought out, subhanallah. So that's quite comforting to to know. I guess it's a different landscape. But Kamal also mentioned the UK, and I brought up the UK. But that's quite an interesting, let's maybe say a dispute, because talking to you and in the conversation that we had just off camera, one could assume that you're from England, but we're kind of wrong. So tell us a little bit about yourself and give us a little bit about your family upbringing, inshallah, because we're familiar that you lived in England for 10 years. But you're actually not from the UK, despite what the accent gives off. So inshallah, please tell our audience and us, inshallah, a little bit of your background.
So I mean, when people ask me where I'm from, I always pause. I don't know how to answer myself. My father's from South India. My mother's from Pakistan. I was born and bred in the United Arab Emirates. And I went to university in the UK and I stayed there for a decade. Married, had children there. For my children, that's their home. Like they're born and bred, that's all they know. So alhamdulillah, when you read about the ulama of the past, just on the flight I was reading about Al-Izz ibn Abd Salam, and it was like Damascus and then Egypt and then Iraq, and then you think, I don't even know if he knew where he was from. So I think we'll get by. Alhamdulillah.
Spiritual nomads.
So away from the United Kingdom, you're in the United Arab Emirates. What was the United Arab Emirates like growing up as a young teenager?
Yeah, so growing up young, United Arab Emirates is a very cosmopolitan place. So like I think in my secondary school, like year 7, year 8 classroom, there was like 45 nationalities, maybe something like that. And but the frustration of living in an Arab-speaking country was that as a non-Arab, there wasn't an easy progression path to learn Arabic. So you'd find people who live in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE for their entire lives. My parents have been there for over 40 years, and they won't speak 2 sentences of Arabic. It's just because there's no progression path, and everyone speaks English. So I went through like a crisis of faith when I was about 13. We had a subject called RE, Religious Education, which is a more like comparative religion classroom. Arguments for and against God's existence and critique of religion, and it's the first time I'd come across
It's quite early on.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, so I'm very unsure now about the things I thought were true.
Yeah,
I still remember like the RE teacher told me to present the arguments for God's existence, and then he'd shoot them down one by one. And I thought, oh no, I didn't realize that. So at that time I thought, okay, if I learn Arabic, the Quran is the miracle, right? So like if I learn Arabic, then I'll know it's the truth. Where do I learn Arabic from? So I went from watching Kung Fu Panda dubbed in Arabic to reading books in masjids to like begging imams to speak to me every which way, to eventually like make it to because when we'd have Arabic at school, we'd split into 2 classes. The non-Arabs would go to one class and you'd say Hadha al-walad and tilka al-hadiqa for about 12 years. And then the Arabs would go to a different class and they'd have very advanced Arabic studies. So all I wanted to do was get into the Arabic class, because that curriculum was based off the Azhar Arabic curriculum, so advanced poetry, Jahili poetry, Nahu, Sarf, I'rab, all this kind of stuff. So it was like, I was told like it's never been done. Indian kids not gonna come on
learning Arabic.
Yeah, you're joking, you're laughing at us. But after all the self-study I tried to do, eventually I, alhamdulillah, made it into that class. And that was kind of like the early, what it was like kind of growing up. And one thing about the United Arab Emirates is, one of the benefits about the United Arab Emirates I found as a Muslim growing up is there was just Islam. There were I didn't know about groups and sects and people refuting each other. That was a UK thing that I realized once I got to the UK. I said, oh my goodness, what's going on here? You've got 4 masjids on the same street and they all hate each other.
Yeah, that's very sad.
New. That was new to me.
That's very sad.
Yeah.
So walk us through the journey. Like you've been able to acquire the language of Arabic at a very, very young age. Was that like the opening towards answering a lot of the doubts you probably had?
For me, the biggest answer, I took a really, like you tell someone like, grab your ear and they do this. That's how I came, to the Quran. So I did like a whole GCSE in philosophy and religious studies because I thought that rational arguments were going to strengthen my faith.
Yeah.
So I read everything from David Hume to Anselm to every book out there that I could get my hands on, looking for reasons to believe from a logical perspective. But every argument had a counter argument. Every argument has a counter argument. I'm just thinking. So eventually I'm learning Arabic and I think, subhanAllah, I've never read the meanings of the Quran. So one day I just go to the masjid and literally open Quran translation. I still remember it was Marmaduke Pickthall's translation.
Yes.
And it just opens to Surah Al-Waqi'ah. And I'm reciting Surah Al-Waqi'ah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's speaking to me, and it makes more sense than all the arguments I read. أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ النَّارَ الَّتِي تُورُونَ أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ الْمَاءَ الَّذِي تَشْرَبُونَ. Have you seen the water that you drink? أَأَنْتُمْ أَنزَلْتُمُوهُ مِنَ الْمُزْنِ أَمْ نَحْنُ الْمُنزِلُونَ. Did you send it down from the sky or did we send it from the sky? So every ayah, that latter part of Surah Al-Waqi'ah just hit me like a train. Something clicked. And then I said, okay, I'm going to read the translation of the whole Quran. And that was my journey. Like the Quran gave me conviction, whereas logical arguments just kept confusing me further. And when I went to the Arabic class, I thought that I was going to be taught the Arabic of the Quran. But the Arabic teacher was teaching them Jahili Arabic from pre-Islamic Arabia. I was like, bro, these guys are crazy people, like womanizers and idol worshippers. Like, why am I going to study language from these guys? He said, no, until you understand this Arabic, you won't understand what the Quran has on them. So I'm sitting there memorizing poetry from pre-Islamic Arabia. لسان الفتى نصف ونصف فؤاده فلم يبق إلا صورة اللحم والدم. And I'm like, and I realized there were 8 poems that were written in gold and hung on the Kaaba, the Mu'allaqat, the hanging odes. And we studied them in secondary school. And so before I touched any Islamic sciences, usul al-fiqh and hadith and anything else, I was just immersed in the pre-Islamic language of the Arabs. And it made me have a deep, deep love for the Quran and appreciation for the Quran as a raw Arabic conversation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ. So that was my path.
What was it about the Quran that was so satisfying for, I guess, any questions you may have had, as opposed to, the rational arguments, the logical arguments? What is it about the Quran that makes it so fulfilling for these questions that we have?
What, upon later contemplation, logical arguments are very mechanical.
Yeah.
And they assume that you think in a very step-by-step robotic fashion. Premise 1, 2, 3, 4, conclusion.